Hello. In this video, we're going to look at this interesting way to work. I think I've done a video about this before, but it's worth touching on again just because it's a really fun technique. And essentially, it has to do with stacking arpeggiators and chords in different combinations to sort of get interesting, somewhat generative rhythms. So that's what we're going to do in this video. Okay, so the first thing we need is a drum rack. I'm just going to use this one. Actually, I'm going to leave this open. We don't need the macros right now, just so we can sort of see what's happening. So I'm going to use I have a little MIDI fighter here. If you don't have a MIDI controller, you can make sure that this little button is on and this one here, and use your keyboard on your computer. There's our drum rack. If we bring a arpeggiator in here, you can see what happens. This little button right here, if you don't want the sounds to sort of change each time you click, you can just turn that off and now it'll stay on whatever one you have selected. So if I hit this arpeggiator, you can see what happens. If I hit multiple notes, if you bring a chord in, multiple notes are going to trigger at the same time. You put the chord before the arpeggiator. Now, if we group that by hitting Command G, and click this little button down here and go into key zone. You hold the note that you want to sort of assign this to. You can see it lights up red, and then you can double click this green line, and that'll stay. This arpeggiator chord thing is only going to happen when you send it this MIDI note. If you want access to these other notes, which you see I'm triggering and nothing's coming through because this is sort of keeping everything from, sort of passing through. The only thing that's going to pass through is this specific note. You can add another chain, slide this up, and now we have access, the way we normally would. So I'm going to duplicate this again. Now we have two of the same thing. So basically two MIDI notes, two arpeggiators, two chords. They're all shoving through to the same notes on this drum rack at the same time. If I shift this up to another note, now we have two ways to sort of trigger this. But suppose I wanted these same notes to come through and I've shifted this up here. You just add a pitch and shift it down one. In this case, it's one because we've shifted up one here. So we're going to shift down one here. And now we have two ways to trigger the same group of notes. And those notes are based off of this chord. So you'll see if I change this top shift here. So rim glitcha, that's the top note, I think. So if we shift this down to 4, no, the top note was actually snare, I guess. I don't know why that would be. Ah, that's why. Because this is shifted up 9. Anyway, you move the notes around. In fact, it may even be easier when you first set this up to sort of watch what's happening as you change these. I like that better. So I'm going to copy this, come into this other chain, and delete that and paste this one in. So now we have two versions of the same thing again. The second one, we can change the rate on this arpeggiator. We duplicate this again. And again, we're going to shift this up. And so now we're up at this note. So we'll shift the pitch down so we can get back to where we were. I'm going to drag the chord after the arpeggiator and maybe do like 12. back up. All right, let's add another one. I'm going to keep this in line, actually. Drag that up. So now we have our fourth note here. I'm going to turn this off, switch this to 16, and just kind of pick a couple of random notes here. I don't like the synth thing. So this sort of stepping thing we have here, we can still use that as well. So I'm going to switch this to 1, maybe, let's do 1. And then go down or up. I don't know. I'm not feeling very, yeah. Okay. I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to shift this up. And for this one, I'm going to duplicate it again. So right now we're working on this sort of thing. So now we have 2 ways to trigger it because I've duplicated it here, shifted up, done all that stuff. I'm not going to change the notes that are triggered, but I'm going to shift, not that one. I come to this one, shift it up to 24. Yeah. All right. I don't like that actually. And the reason I don't like it is because I wanted to do this. Maybe not that extreme, but that. So we kind of have the same sort of deal here, but changing over time. So to make that happen, I'm just going to add a MIDI envelope to, doesn't matter, as long as it's before the arpeggiator. And then we'll assign this to here and play with this envelope here to sort of get the sound that we want. Generally speaking, if I'm going to use the mod type, I'll turn this little plus button on. That way I know that it's going to start from this point right here. So right where that line is, that's where it's going to start, and it's going to go all the way up and end, you know, wherever it would end depending on these controls here. If you don't have the plus button on, it's going to start, basically this amount is going to be divided on both sides of this little marker here. I prefer this way. Maybe a little faster. Yeah, let's do that. I'm shifting this back down so we have the same notes. And the reason for that is this part right here, that's unquantized. This, which is the second one down here, that is quantized. Since this slows down so much, you can sort of fake out it getting quantized. There would be a way that you could have this, you know, over a certain amount of time. So basically you would go through and look at the sort of numbers here, add up what that overall time is, add another envelope, and have that envelope at the end switch this. So you could do that, but I'm just going to do it with zones instead. It's a little bit easier. So now we can sort of fake it getting quantized, if that makes sense. This might make a little more sense here. So we have our ratchet here, and then it's going to switch to this quantized thing. Is this going to be enough time? Let's see. Okay. Yeah. So if we were to move this over a little more and extend this, you can sort of hear where there's a little bit of a switch. So ideally, you would have it happen pretty close to where it's getting to the end of the envelope stage. Okay. I think we kind of probably have enough here to work with. Maybe I'll do one more just as another example here of something. So this is the last note we're going to work with here. I'm going to delete the chord, I think. Yes, I'm going to delete the chord. And why do we have two notes coming through? Because of this. So I'm going to shift this up till we get a hi-hat. And now we have something steady we can have as this other stuff is playing. And what I mean by that is we come in here, we can add this over top of everything. So now we can add our notes in here. Yeah, let's shift these down, this up, shorten it. So this little break here, this is another kind of fun thing you can do is you can have the sort of arpeggiator restart or just extend it. Let's duplicate that. That really jumps out at you. That may be what you want. It may not be. The way you would make it a little bit less aggressive is to sort of get it out of this audio range here. So and it's also just kind of loud. That might be another thing that's sort of making it poke out so much. And rather than going through and doing the right thing, which would be to sort of properly gain stage this, I'm just going to smash it with a drum bus, and that might fix our issue. And it does, in my opinion. The last thing I'm going to do, I have this arpeggiator in here, and you can hear it ratcheting all those notes. Right now it's happening by itself, but we could have this other stuff going on, you know, while that's sort of doing its ratchet thing. If we add a delay here at the end and turn the dry wet down, maybe the feedback up a little bit, come back to this envelope and assign it to the dry wet of this delay. I'm going to put this before the drum bus. So now when that ratchet thing happens, it's also going to turn an effect on that's going to affect the entire kit. I'm going to turn it up a little more. Another thing you could do, you could either add the envelope to this rate, so it does one of those sort of things, or you could use this little modulation thing down here, but I prefer to actually use an LFO I have a little bit more control over. we can map this to here. So if we switch this to random and turn the percentage way down, we can just get a little bit of variation in it. Alternatively, we could assign the envelope like I was talking about. So now that sort of pitch drop thing that you heard it do, it's going to do that same exact thing every time. And it's always going to sound like that, to where it almost sounds like a sample. If you switch this to remote, you can map this LFO on top of that envelope modulation. You'll just need to sort of scale it appropriately. So I'm going to shift this up a little bit and this down. So if we didn't have this LFO assigned, like we were talking about before, we turn this little plus button on, the envelope is going to start where this little dial is, and then we can sort of offset it by just dragging it. Once we do an LFO over top of the envelope modulation, the way we do our offset is with these dials here. So that's going to be the low end, and this is going to be the high end, kind of. And I just want a little bit of modulation in there, so that way when that sort of ratchet and envelope happens on this delay, it doesn't sound quite the same every time. I'm going to duplicate this and have both. This is a Snakes of Russia technique. If you're not familiar with their music, you should definitely go check it out. But this is something I saw them do once. And when I saw it, I was like, well, wait, what's the point of that? And I actually asked them, and it was like, you kind of just have to try it and play with it. And there is something really interesting that happens with the transient getting shortened. So it's getting forced to be shorter and then asked to expand again after that. This sort of thing where it really sort of sticks out, this is an area where I'll definitely put some chance in so that doesn't happen every time. And you can even kind of balance it with maybe another one of these other things happening. So yeah, really fun way to work. Just kind of playing with all these different controls. You could even, if you wanted to get really fancy with it, map each one of these to its own macro. So then you can really sort of play with them on the fly. Just set up a bunch of MIDI notes in here and try out different combinations and see what happens. So hope you enjoyed, and thanks for watching.